Well, let's catch up with our good friend Mark Schipper, FifthDownCFB.com's got a great newsletter, covers college football and has for quite some time. Hits on SiriusXM, ESPN Radio, and tied into UCLA. Chip Kelly deciding to leave the head coaching gig in the Big Ten. Swag and I talked about this for a OC gig in the Big Ten. You do not see this very often. He was not pushed out. He forced his way out. He was interviewing everybody with everybody and their mom just to not be the head coach. So Mark Schipper joins us now. Mark, good morning. Thanks for hopping on with us. What the hell happened here? What is going on here?
Yeah, what's going on, guys? Always a pleasure. Chip Kelly did indeed leave of his own volition, but he was pressured to go or under pressure to go, probably internally within himself. His athletic director had moved to fire him in October of last year during UCLA's disastrous October when they got beat by maybe one of the worst Arizona State teams in school history. Got beat by Arizona, and Chip's team there was a physical scuffle in the locker room at halftime at the Arizona game, and things were falling apart. That move to fire him was thwarted by a major UCLA booster and the chancellor at the school. But from that moment forward, Chip knew he was pretty much fried at UCLA. And if things went south in the Big Ten next year, which they were likely to do, he was going to be fired. So from that point on, he was trying to get his way out. And he tried just about every path there was for him in the United States before finally landing at Ohio State.
I love that you say United States, as if he was going to go interview somewhere in South America or Europe just to get out of the situation. Hey, I'm going to pull a lasso. I'm going to coach soccer at this point to get out of this. Okay, so they want to fire him in October. It was a bad season for UCLA. They had a good defense, but it wasn't the greatest of years. They had Dante Moore. He throws a bunch of picks. They shatter him. His confidence goes. He bolts for Eugene. The future doesn't look good with Chip. Why the hell did they keep him then? Was it just beating USC? Everybody, I think, Mark, thought he was going to get fired.
Yeah.
And then they randomly blow out USC, which I remember seeing that in Corvallis going, how the hell did that happen? And then they kept him. So, how did things go from October firing, talk out of it, to keeping Chip Kelly?
Yeah, it was interesting with Chip Kelly and UCLA. 2 years before that in the Coliseum, they scored 66 on USC or whatever it was and blew them out again. So beating USC saved Chip a couple of times. And that win over USC last year, you're kind of alluding to it. A lot of people talked about that as a big deal and what a huge win for UCLA. It was what it really did is it saved athletic director Martin Jarmon and Chancellor Gene Block and the school from the embarrassment of moving to fire him and then not fire him. It was sort of a get out of jail card for Chip and everybody involved. If you remember, the week after that, UCLA got throttled at home by a bad Cal team and finished 4-5 in the Pac-12. So it was the USC win was just like a manna from on high for the people in a tough situation. The main reason he was not fired at that time is he had the year prior, the athletic director had extended Chip's contract and all of his assistants, and he had an $8 million buyout. He essentially made it more expensive to fire Chip just 7 months prior. And then the next season, that same athletic director moves to fire him. So the chancellor's looking at this and going, you extended this guy last year, and now the middle of the next season, you're going to fire him? If he was this close to being fired, why did you extend him? So essentially, it was mismanagement by the athletic director and the chancellor being appalled that saved Chip along with that USC one.
FifthDownCFB.com is where you can find our guest, Mark Schipper. You can find him on Twitter as well. Great newsletter covering college football. Chip Kelly bolting UCLA. What do you think of Chip as an OC at Ohio State? I know Ryan Day was his quarterback once upon a time in New Hampshire, but what do you make of Chip just as an OC? I'd imagine, too, Mark, that the deal with whoever was going to hire him, well, NFL not so much, but in college, I'm not recruiting. That guy hates recruiting. I'd imagine he's just going to shake a hand, say hi to a kid, and go back in the film room. What do you think of the hire for Ohio State?
Yeah, it's interesting. I pulled up a tweet. I was just looking through some old tweets to see what I'd said about Chip, and I said if UCLA is serious, they need to move Chip to offensive coordinator and hire a serious head coach. That was 2 years ago. So what do I think of Chip as OC? I think it's a great move. It's the one thing the guy's gifted at, particularly in the running game. His passing game is, I would say, is not nearly as advanced or potent as his running game. I would say he's going to have to make some tweaks there. But with the right players, Chip can still dial up an offense. And the big boon of going to Ohio State for him is he does not have to recruit. As you said, the guy does not recruit. It's the most unbelievable thing I've ever seen. UCLA's recruiting classes, if you look at it in the 21st century, the 21st century has not been UCLA's best era of football by a long shot. Their recruiting class average is 17th nationally. So UCLA can get players. Chip's final recruiting class was 86th in the country. I mean, the guy, it's unreal how he doesn't recruit.
Wow.
Now, you go to Ohio State, that's a recruiting juggernaut, a machine. Those guys will go anywhere in the country and pull the best player out of a state, and they got the staff to do it. So I think Chip's going to walk out onto the practice field and game field at Ohio State and go, oh, my God, look at these guys who are going to be running my offense. This is absolute perfection for me. So I think Ohio State made what looks like a great move for the offensive coordinator position.
Did UCLA make the right hire at coach? We were talking about who's going to take the coaching gig, and then I think 15 minutes later, they tweeted Deshaun Foster, who had just left to the Raiders, even though he was on the staff. He's come back to his alma mater. I know they did the traditional college thing where the coach that's kept, that the players like, they celebrate in the auditorium. It's a great video to see. I'm happy for the kids, but that doesn't mean it's good. Do you think they made the right hire? Like, what do you make of UCLA in the way they're operating just the football department?
Yeah, I would say hiring a coach because the currently rostered players like him purely for that reason would be a bad plan. I use the example of Miami. Miami had a couple of coaching turnovers during its glory years in which players wanted certain guys who were on staff, and the university wisely said no. When Howard Schnellenberger left, the players wanted a guy. Miami brought in Jimmy Johnson. They won a national title. When Jimmy Johnson left, the players wanted a certain guy. The university said no. They brought in Dennis Erickson. They won 2 more national titles. When Butch Davis left, the players wanted Larry Coker. They hired Larry Coker. Now, Coker won a title, but it was with Butch Jones's team, or Butch Davis's team, pardon me. And then the program fell apart under Larry Coker. Mm-hmm. So did UCLA make the right hire? UCLA was constrained in this moment. The timing's super awkward. We're just a few weeks before spring football practice is going to begin. Chip Kelly's assistants, like I said earlier, were extended along with Chip. So UCLA has some assistants who are on staff for a couple years that the school doesn't want to buy out. So whoever was going to come in to coach was going to be saddled with the staff. And as you guys know, most coaches want to bring in their own guys. They want to bring in their offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, position guys, and they weren't going to be able to do that at UCLA. So Deshaun Foster knows these guys. He's been on staff with these guys, and he can work with these guys. So if Deshaun works out, great for UCLA. But UCLA may be looking to make the decisive move in a couple of years, and they'll have a new chancellor at the school and maybe a new AD to do it. So that's what I'd say about UCLA right now.
Mark, I'll get you out of here with this. Who do you think wins the Big Ten next year, the old B1G? Do you got Ohio State, Oregon, or do you got a team out there? Is it Michigan going to come back and represent its crown? There's a lot of question marks with certain programs and the new realigned B1G. Who's your pick to win the conference next year?
Yeah, the B1G league. What's really fascinating to me is Oregon is going into that league with one of the best rosters in the country. And so obviously one of the best in the Big Ten. And then Ohio State's going to be right there with them and Chip at OC. I think Michigan's replacing too much of that staff and too many of the guys to defend their title for a 4th straight time. So I think Michigan probably drops back a little bit. Ohio State, Oregon at the top is actually – it's one I just got a little bit of a feeling about. I'm interested to see Iowa with their new offensive coordinator and see if they can score some points. The defense is obviously elite almost every year. So.
Mark. You're not wrong on the defense. That offense is never going to be good. That guy wants to punt the football. What offense is he ever going to bring in that's going to be good? That guy doesn't want offense. He wants to punt and play defense.
Well, we'll see. It's been a formula that's worked for him a bit. Iowa had better offenses earlier in Kirk Ferentz's tenure. They scored 28, 31, 34 a game and, won a couple Big Ten titles, but we'll see. It certainly had slipped to all-time lows in the last few years, which was really shockingly bad. So we'll see.
Yeah, all-time great sweatshirt created from that team this year. Just punts. We're just rooting for punts in the under, baby. Mark Schipper, fifthdown.cfb.com. Great newsletter in college football, joining us for how this Chip Kelly UCLA divorce ended up happening. Chip bolts as the head coach of UCLA to stay in the conference and coach the offense of a different team instead of being the head man, which I think speaks to UCLA and Chip Kelly both for different reasons. Mark, thanks for hopping on with us this morning, man. We always appreciate the time and for the latest on Chip Kelly and UCLA.
All right, guys. Appreciate you. Take care out there, all right?
All right, there we go. Mark Schipper, fifthdown.cfb.com. Just what a weird situation between UCLA and Chip Kelly to go from, we want to fire this guy, he loses to a not-so-good Arizona State team, to, oh, big booster and president, we just extended him, we're not going to fire him. And so they just stuck it out. He beats USC at the end of the year, and they kind of double down on their stupidity, and Chip doesn't like the situation, clearly doesn't have a great situation with the athletic director. And so he's going to bolt to a program he doesn't need to recruit. He just coaches offense because they've got skill guys all over the place. A really wild story in college football in general. So good stuff there from Mark Schipper of fifthdown.cfb.com.